If I'm honest, when I probably first became suspicious, it's when I was away. I do commentary work, or I did back then with RTE. And when I'd be away on trips, I found that I was more and more looking for the toilet. And that's when I became conscious of it. I should have realised that there's something going on here that's a little bit sinister. And I didn't address it.
Unfortunately, I suffer from gout, which means that I have to get some medication on a regular basis. So when you're getting medication on a regular basis, you've got to get blood tests. So the blood tests were done every 6 months. And my GP, he was showing me a graph. The graph was steadily rising, and he said, I think we'll have to have a look at this. But the key was picking it up early.
I was worse than Dave. I let it go much further. So I'm the ultimate hypocrite here. I'm the one who's now asking men to go out and do something about it. And I didn't. And I hold my hands up on that. And I admit how wrong and foolish I was to go down that road. You know, as Dave and I would say, you know, we're males, we're strong, we're indestructible, we're sportsmen, you know, nothing phases us. And that was my mindset, certainly at that time. That's the way I felt. We're improving slightly, and I think even Dave and I talking about it now, hopefully will generate interest among men in their own welfare.
Even if it makes one difference, even if it changes one person's attitude and say, well, let's get checked, at least get checked.
I think the one thing and the one message that we would love to get to all men is that they've got to toughen up. And by toughen up, I mean they've got to recognise the vulnerability, the potential vulnerability for what it is, and to do something about it. And I think that, more than anything, is what manning up means when we use that expression.
Yeah, and like it's so easy to bottle things up. It's so easy to pretend it's not happening and that, okay, next week I'll do that, or next week I'll do that, and the following week, and that next Monday. But the next Monday might never come if we don't do something about it. And that's what I feel the message that I'd like to get across and you'd like to get across is that it's time that, you know, we took control of ourselves. This is serious. This is life and death. This is major.
Yeah. Onward and upward.
Yeah, exactly.
Good afternoon, everyone. You're all very welcome to our Men's Health Awareness webinar series. As you could see there, Tony Ward and his friend Dave have spoken very openly about how they see themselves now and how they have been in their lives. And the message they're giving you today is very clear. It can actually create vulnerability, but, you know, addressing that vulnerability and talking to each other and going, you know, doing something about your health is actually what they're saying here today. Tony has been an ambassador for men's health and in particular prostate cancer for some years now. And he has learned that when things start changing, don't procrastinate, get connected, re-engage and look after your health. So that's the main message. So he is the hook, finding the hook. Lorcan is going to talk all about this later on for us. And I actually learned this from Lorcan, so I'm very grateful for it. The hook is what, you know, our hook in the Marie Keating Foundation is we use sports figures and comedians to get this message out to you all. We call it the hook and we think it works. It is, of course, all about men's health awareness and support. And we are here to celebrate that over the next few weeks, and particularly last week as well, at the beginning of Men's Health Awareness Week. This is week 2 of the series. Today we are going to learn more about the concept of better lives for men, better lives for all. And I will introduce Lorcan, our keynote speaker, shortly. Last week, to mark Men's Health Awareness Week, we listened to Dr. Mark Rowe, the GP in the chair, and he talked to us about like creating happiness, finding happiness, vitality. And actually our conversation and discussion centered around mental health in this COVID space. So hopefully by the end of this hour, we will be well versed on what we at the Marie Keating Foundation can offer you, our men in Ireland, but also how important men's health awareness is to us. Often and for many years, we have been known to support women with breast cancer, but that has all changed. So do keep an ear out over the coming weeks to learn more. So let me tell you a little bit more about men's health. The World Health Organization states that a healthy man is one who is empowered to experience optimum physical, mental, and social well-being, and who experiences health as a resource for everyday living. And that's really important. I think we should be very proud also that Ireland was the first in the world to have a national men's health policy in 2009. And I believe Lorcan was very much a driver and a big part in all of that. And if anybody read the Sunday Independent, Dr. Noel Richardson, actually last Sunday, Dr. Noel Richardson, director of the National Centre for Men's Health, wrote an article, Why Men Don't Go to Their GPs, go to their doctors, and how we can change that. But, you know, he believes that men routinely make smart choices when it comes to their livelihood, but struggle with self-care. And certainly, you know, I agree with that. I've worked with a lot of men in my time, and they tend to not care about themselves as much. So one of the reasons the Marie Keating Foundation are so passionate about reaching out to men is that we know that cancer is the leading cause of death for men. It runs at about 33%. Second comes circulatory disease, heart disease, and thirdly, respiratory disease at 11%. But we know that most of these circumstances we can help ourselves, and that's why we are here. It is for men and the women in your lives, for those of you who have concern about your overall health, who have had a cancer diagnosis and have come out the other side, you know, and actually living in a new normal, in a new world. Cancer changes things. But also for those who find themselves on a journey of regular treatment because cancer has spread to other parts of the body. So please sit back and take home what is important to you from this afternoon session. I'm Helen Forrest, the Director of Nursing at the Marie Keating Foundation. And I'm delighted you are here joining us today at lunchtime. As an attendee, you don't really have the ability to speak to us or turn on your video, but we would love you to participate in the webinar, no less, whether that's anonymously or by name. So you'll find a question and answer button at the bottom of your screen. So click into that and just ask any questions you would like. This is a great opportunity to connect and to have some of those questions answered that maybe you've been thinking about for a while. We're also streaming live on Facebook. So if you have a question, put it into the Facebook page and we can pick that up too. So yeah, I hope we have good interaction and we will answer your questions at the end of the session. This webinar is being recorded also, so it will be a nice resource to have. And if you know anybody who you think has missed out today, do please send on the link when you get it. That'll be ready in a couple of days' time. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the Marie Keating Foundation, but I really want to concentrate on what we're doing for men at the moment. You will see here that we try to support people every step of the way. We have a positive living program, which is a support group for women with metastatic breast cancer, and that's been running since 2016. The good news here is that we're setting a program up for men, and that will start on the 30th of September this year. We often celebrate men's health in September. It's called Blue September. So we have a few initiatives coming up that we want to tell you about, and here they are. So if you know anybody who's had any kind of cancer and that cancer has spread to other parts of the body, and they are in need of help and support, and they want to engage with people who are going through similar, journey, experiences, this is where to come. It's a beautiful place to be, it's a safe place to be, and it's facilitated by myself at the moment. And we get lots of good feedback and evaluation. But I think the most important thing about this group is that you connect with people who are feeling the same as you and are going through a similar journey. We have corporate wellness webinars, and they're managed by Bernie Carter, our Assistant Director of Nursing. And this is a great place for people to learn about different types of cancers, about signs and symptoms of cancers, what might be worrying you, and if something is worrying you, what you should do about it. And the message you will hear today, loud and clear, you've heard it already, is don't delay, go to your GP. So again, there's lots of learning for different types of cancers and what you should do. We have a Survive and Thrive workshop, and we run 4 of these per year. And they are self-management programs, and they're very much based on the Stanford model of survivorship. They're fantastic. We have 2 nurses and 2 cancer survivors facilitating this program. I'm going to introduce you to Paul Power in a short while. And Paul and I work very closely on 2 of these programs per year. They're 8-week programs, they're quite intense, but they are self-management programs. And what we see from beginning to end is a transformation in people who actually learn to manage some of the emotions they've been feeling, some of the difficulties like, managing fatigue, and lots of practical issues like learning about diet and exercise, and learning how to talk to your healthcare professionals. So it's a really, really important program. It does transform people's lives, and we're delighted to be doing that. We have a community outreach service. We have 3 mobile units in the country, in the east, the west, and the south. And we have 8 nurses working part-time who are oncology trained or health promotion trained. And they are there to help you. So wherever we are there to help. It can be a great opportunity to pop into a mobile unit and talk to one of our nurses privately about a concern you might have been thinking about over time, and suddenly you haven't gone to the GP and you realize that, but we are there. So great opportunity. We could be on a beach somewhere talking about skin cancer and using sunscreen, protecting your skin. We could be outside a pharmacy, but equally we can be in retirement centres, we can be in youth reach, and we can be in schools. So whatever opportunities are there, and if you want us to visit any of your, your community areas, please connect with us, and I'll give you the details in a minute. This year, we've realized more so than ever that we haven't been able to connect with underserved communities. So we've got 2 fairly big projects running, and one is with the local development networks in Offaly and Roscommon, and that is working with Syrian women, refugees in Ireland who are settling, and we're doing a great project on cervical cancer awareness and cervical screening and the HPV testing. So a huge awareness around that, and we've developed a lot of our materials into the Arabic language, and I suppose sensitive to their own needs, and that's working quite well at the moment. We're going to do a project on breast, and later on in the year, September into November, we're also going to work with the Syrian men, and they're a hard group to engage with because of all the barriers, but we're actually making great progress there, and we're delighted about that. We're also working with Pave Point, the Traveller Community Group in Ireland, and we're going to do various information leaflets, again, culture sensitive to their own needs. And that is where engagement really works, because if they see something and they like it, they will connect with it. And we have an Ask the Nurse service, and this has increased exponentially over COVID. The calls have been quite complex, and they have been full of anxiety, I can assure you. And I hope we have been there to actually answer those calls for people. So if you're in need of any of these support services, you can either email into info@mariekeating.ie, or you can ring our office line on 01628 3726, and we'd be delighted to help you. So just looking at what we've done so far, and I suppose what impacts we have made in men's health. And look, we all laugh about this, I suppose, the Bell campaign, I gave a shit and it saved my life. It's very tongue-in-cheek, but it works well. So this was all about, encouraging men to be aware of bowel cancer, the signs and symptoms, and looking at any changes in their bowel habits or blood in stool, and actually talking about the bowel screen as well, which is probably the only screening that's available for men in Ireland at the moment between the age of 60 and 69. So a really good campaign that worked really well for us, thankfully. We always do campaigns around prostate cancer, as it is the second most common cancer. You saw that in the video. In Ireland, skin cancer is the most common, but prostate cancer is very much associated with men. It's what we're beginning to talk about more and more. And that campaign has developed over time into Get Men Talking. That's why we're here today, to encouraging men to speak, to listening to people like Tony Ward and his friend. And you're going to listen to PJ Gallagher in a little while. Davy Fitz is another example of somebody who ran a campaign for us or helped us with our campaign around bladder cancer only in May of this year. It was a campaign that we set up in 2017, but we reignited it this year. Very simple message: see red in yellow, go to your GP. See blood in your urine, go to your GP. So they're quite simple messages, but they're strong. And because we have sports advocates and comedians, delivering these messages, they get heard. And that's what we call the hook. Other campaigns that we would have run over time are the skin cancer awareness campaigns. Now, I said earlier that skin cancer is the most common cancer in Ireland. We do have that skin type. Melanoma has the highest mortality rates, particularly for men. So we really want people to be aware of skin cancer, what it is, the signs and symptoms of, and our behaviors in the sun. We don't believe we get the sun in Ireland so much, and our behaviors are quite different. You can see there we have Skin Chancer, and that was very much based on kind of a sports initiative as well, looking at, I guess the image there says we strip off, we actually don't screen, and we get a suntan or a burn, and that can be very dangerous. One thing we have running this year is a podcast, a melanoma podcast, and it's an 8-episode series. It started in May, and it's running right through to August. So I would, recommend that you tune in to your Spotify or even to our own website, or if you have the podcast itself, tune in and listen to our messages there. It's like a chat. It's easy to listen to, and you can do that while you're out walking or just relaxing. And let's not forget about our Look Good, Feel Better. We've run this program with a company called Look Good, Feel Better. They're fantastic. They're a non-for-profit organization as well, and they have really embraced looking good and feeling better online, because they would have been in hospitals where people who have had cancer and suffered the consequences of treatments, would engage with the Look Good, Feel Better, looking at their hair, nails, skincare, etc. We're doing this for men as well, and we're delighted, because actually we realize that this can affect men, and of course it does. Why shouldn't it? So we are here, and I know we're going to run another one in September this year. So keep your eyes out and keep an eye on our website, because we have much, much more to come. Only last week, during Men's Health Awareness Week, we engaged with the construction industry on a face-to-face basis, because we haven't really been out there since last October. But this was a really nice engagement with groups of men who listened to what we had to say, particularly around like reducing your risks of cancers by looking at your lifestyle and choices, skin cancer and prostate cancer. So we had Alicia, our nurse there, had a great opportunity, visited 7 different sites, and great messages and great connections all around. So, do ask for our help. We're more than willing to be out there to help you and to engage with whatever your, educational needs are. So, Your Health, Your Choice is really about cancer prevention, cancer awareness, and it helps you, to, I suppose, to learn more about why we talk about all these things and why they are so important, and why they actually do tend to reduce your risks of cancer going forward in life. Lorcan will talk a little bit about Healthy Ireland later on. And there are 7 pillars that we are actually constantly talking about upgrading and educating, the public on. And they are diet, so maintaining a healthy weight and, introducing a healthy diet into your life, physical activity and sport. We're going to talk on the 12th of July about physical activity, the Move On programme, and how that has benefited men all over Ireland, which is a really positive step forward. We talk about alcohol. Alcohol consumption in Ireland is complex, and we look at limitations and people's understanding of what that is. We talk about smoking and actually allowing people to realise that there's a huge amount of support out there around Ireland in the HSE for smoking cessation. We talk about sun safe and safety in the sun, and understanding the sun, understanding the UV index, and actually, agreeing and realising that we do get sun in Ireland and it can be dangerous. So it's really it's to enjoy the sun and this lovely weather, but to be safe within it. We talk about cancer screening, and as I said earlier, for men, bowel screen is probably the screening that is available for men, but also vaccinations. The HPV vaccination is now available for young men in first year of secondary school, and that's a real step forward. That was introduced in 2019, September 2019. It didn't really get a good head start with COVID, but that will come back. So we're really pleased that is how we, educate people structurally throughout Ireland. So we have some upcoming men's health events. Next week we'll be talking to Kathy Marr, who's a community pharmacist in the Duleek pharmacy, and actually she's going to talk to us about how, if you didn't want to go to your GP, how you engage with the pharmacist and what kind of advice you can get there. So that's next week, Tuesday evening, 7 to 8 p.m. So do tune in for that. Week 4 is about Get Men Moving and what this means for men and their families in Ireland. And we have Peter Jones, who actually is in the Waterford Sports Partnership. And he's kind of developed this program, but he's going to bring along a couple of men who have really benefited from this. And they're going to tell us how they've benefited and what it has done for them and their families. So really positive vibe coming from physical activity. And as I said, we Male Survive and Thrive program beginning on the 14th of September. Paul Power will be here to tell us a little bit about that and his connection with that and how that is for him in his life. And Male Positive Living meetings beginning on the 30th of September, monthly through to December. So that's how you can register for those programs. So do connect with us, keep in touch. We are really happy to be able to help you. This is Paul. Paul was diagnosed with prostate cancer in November 2015. And we had the privilege of meeting Paul when we were on a training program with the National Cancer Control Program. We were training to be facilitators in the delivery of the Survive and Thrive program. And we've successfully done that. Paul and I and Mary and Yvonne have worked quite hard over the years to develop the program. And of course, everything crashed last year in COVID, and Paul and I were in the middle of a program in New Ross, County Wexford. And we decided that we would actually pilot it and go online. And we presented ourselves to the National Cancer Control Program. And we found ourselves delivering programs online. And I can tell you, I didn't think I would see that happening, but it happens. And it's brilliant. Commitment is 100% almost. It is a change. I guess we will get back to face-to-face at some time, but we will always now embrace the kind of blended face-to-face and online approach to supporting people who have had cancer in Ireland. So Paul will come on when Lorcan has delivered his session to us. And Lorcan, I am very privileged to have Lorcan with us here today. Lorcan and I met during the Men's Health Forum, which is meetings that are held quite frequently on the lead up to Men's Health Awareness Week in June, on the lead up to Father's Day. And that introduction to the Men's Health Forum was a really structured approach for me and for the Marie Keating Foundation to develop our services around for men in Ireland and to get that profile. So we're delighted to have Lorcan here today. Lorcan is a training and resource development manager at the Men's Development Network in Ireland. And through his work, he facilitates training and presentations nationally, supporting greater awareness of men's health matters. And Lorcan's approach is really sensitive and focuses on supporting men toward well-being and health. His health presentations explore why as men we can sometimes struggle to support ourselves, positive health and well-being, and also highlight incremental evidence-based ways for overall well-being. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Lorcan in to talk to us. Hi, Lorcan, how are you?
Lovely to be here. Thank you very
welcome.
much. Very good to be here.
I'll move off while you're presenting, Lorcan, and we'll see you in a short while.
Okay, can I share the screen there, Helen?
You can.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'm just going to win there.
So I'll stop sharing there now. And
that's super. Thank you very much. Here we go. Hello, everybody. A little bit of an echo there. Maybe that'll go in a few moments' time. My name is Lorcan, and it's lovely to be here with you today. And Helen, thanks for the lovely introduction and all the work that you're doing there in relation to the Marie Keating Foundation. I know Helen, as she said, for a good while now, and I'm just delighted to have the opportunity to actually come on at last and do something here in relation to men's health for you, especially just off the back of Men's Health Week. I'm from the Men's Development Network. Helen's already said that. We're based in Waterford, and you can check us out later on. You can go and have a look and see where we are, mensnetwork.ie, and there's lots of resources and information there about who it is we are and how it is we work. And I hope you might find it resourceful and interesting as well along the way. Lots of different things that we're involved in, most especially, I suppose, at the heart of the work we do in the development side of our work is around promoting equality and change in society, and especially, I suppose, calling us as men to become our best selves and for better lives for men, better lives for all. That's always been our motto, and I hope we try and do that in all the different parts of the work that we have that are there along the way. We have a male advice line, we have a domestic violence intervention program, we have our health program, we had our advocacy and white ribbon, lots of different things. But I'd say go and have a look yourselves when you get a chance in relation to that. And as I say, you'll find us at mensnetwork.ie. That's where we are. One of the first things I said, and Helen has covered it, the guys in the video at the start covered it so well. You know, I have a phone here. We all have our phones. Here it is. I've actually two of them. They're fantastical machines and they can do so much for us, but they can also be kind of dangerous because there's loads of fantastical information out there that we can find ourselves in. And we know a little bit about ourselves as men in relation to, I suppose, laying out the stall at the very beginning. In my take-home message is very simple here today. And the guys have given the message at the start, and Helen also has given it, and it's around don't delay, go today, but also about finding our information in the right places. And you know, when we think about men and men's health and men's lives, and Tony especially was probably referring to this at the start, we have to start with this place. There are many different types of masculinities. So there's many different types of men in the world. And in relation to our health and our wellness and our well-being and our own call to action around minding ourselves and our health and our well-being, it's really important that we remember that as we go along. So there's not one simple way of addressing our health and well-being in relation to going out and coming up with one program that's going to work for all of us, because there's this really kind of multiple layer of how it is we can express and live our masculinities. And maybe one program or one signposting could work for one group of men or one type of man and another mightn't. So that's part of the challenge in the call for action. But I'm saying it's signposting itself. Do please go to the proper places, for want of a better word, to get the really good information. And hse.ie is not a bad place to go. It's really, really good. A lot of really good information in there. We're on here today, Marie Keating as well. The places that we know are really important. It's really essential for ourselves as men that we signpost ourselves and others to the right places for our health and our well-being. And that has been said, here's our key pledge: don't delay, go today. If we're out there as a man, you know, and we're worried or we're concerned about something, this is actually a slide from Men's Health Week some years ago, really important slide. That's the key take-home message, you know, reach out, get the supports that we need in relation to our health and our well-being. And as Tony was saying at the start, it's around maybe sometimes leaning into that vulnerability in ourselves and being able to allow ourselves to do that, it's really important. Now, this year, you know about it, maybe you've heard about it, just finished over the cusp of it on Monday. We had International Men's Health Week. Now, here's a great news story for all of us anyway, in a changing time. Men's Health Week on the island of Ireland now has over 100 partners who are really interested from all the different organisations, including Helen and her group here as well, that get together on an annual basis. And we try to focus on what key messaging we might bring out so that men might respond and look after our health and well-being better. This year, it was a virtual event because we're still kind of under somewhat lockdown. We're changing and we're getting out there into the sunshine, but it is changing, it's taking time. But we came up with this thing about making the connections. And if there's ever anything to say about ourselves as men, and even for myself, memo to self here, it's so important to keep those connections that we have, or make those connections, so that we can live really well in the world. And the theme that we came up with this year as well was around checking in with ourselves. To go back to Tony at the very start of the video, how important for ourselves as men to check in with ourselves, to see how we're feeling, maybe even just here today, on a level of 1 to 10, you know, where am I sitting in my life? Where am I sitting in my body? How am I feeling today? It's not a bad thing to do for any of us, men, women, all of us, young people. Where am I? To check in and to check up then. I had my neighbor across the wall. I was out there just about an hour ago having a chat with him on the road, and to check in with one another, minding each other, seeing how things are going in relation. And then the last one, of course, is to check out. If there's something that we need to look at, if there's something we're really concerned about, we need to check it out. And if you go away with those key messages out of today, it's really important because they're at the heart of all of the practice we're about in relation to the Men's Development Network, and trying to get men, all of us, to kind of become more awake to the fact of living better lives and finding for ourselves what it is we need and the resources we need. And the reason we need to do it, and the reason we have this Men's Health Week and the Men's Health Forum of Ireland are there, especially in relation to it, is that we know that we need to heighten awareness in relation to illness that for many of us as men, we just don't know about. And we need to support especially men and boys, younger men, around healthier lifestyle choices, because we know as men sometimes as well, we're not really great at that aspect of life. And then the last one, we've already mentioned it in relation to detection as well. And we also know these facts, unfortunately, that we're inclined to die earlier in life. This is changing as well, thank God. You know, we're living longer and living well and living better. But we have higher death rates. And this sometimes can be because of poor lifestyles. And also that very last one that Helen had talked about as well, the late presentation. So these are really important things to know in relation to how we mind ourselves. And as part of living well, I suppose that last one in presentations, this is really important around that. As I say, the signposting, the supports that we get are so very important that we can't reiterate it enough. And some of the slides I'm using there, I hope just to use them for a few moments, because I want to go back and have a chat with Helen about this and bring Paul in as well, and just explore some of these things in a little bit more. And sometimes people say, and Helen said about, you know, what about men engaging and why we don't engage with services? And sometimes people say, like, you know, men, you don't care really about your health, do you? I mean, you really need to get with the program. And I often say, well, look, that's a really big conclusion to draw, that as men, we don't really care about our health. And when we did National Men's Health Policy and we looked at all this, we discovered there were many reasons why as men, sometimes we stand back and we don't engage with our health and our well-being. One of them is in relation to what I've mentioned already, our masculinities. The masculinities that we pick up, the messages that we pick up about becoming men. I know this in my own life. I'm in my 50s now, but especially in my 30s, a bit of a perfect storm. And the different messages I was giving out in relation to whether I needed support, the kind of support I needed, and sending mixed messages. Because somewhere along the line, I think very often as men, we might feel that we've picked up contradictory messages about being stoic and strong and independent and breadwinners. And again, to go back to that excellent little video at the start, Tony was saying this kind of stuff. You know your stuff, know where you're going, you know, and we often hear the term even man up. And in the past, it's had the connotation of knowing exactly what you're about, never looking lost. But as you know, and as I know, like, these are not bad things in themselves. They're about building character, you know, they're about delayed gratification, they're about all of the things that can actually be really strong in building the value source that we want to live well in the world. But if these are the things I only have in my toolbox and something goes wrong, there is very little room in there for me to really be vulnerable, accept my own vulnerability, or maybe, as Helen has said, to reach out and get that support or ask for that help that I need along the way in life. So it's really important that we recognize this, that sometimes some of the messages we pick up in relation to being a man in the world can actually act as a barrier. What kind of barriers then would it? Well, if I live in the world like this, and I've picked up only these messages, the chances are I won't even realize when I'm under stress. You know, I won't feel health services are for me because I feel to use your service would be some kind of sign of weakness to me. I mightn't go to my GP earlier. I'll find it hard to talk about exactly how I'm feeling. I might be prone to real isolation. And then this other one, I may be much more prone to develop ways of living in the world that are unhelpful for my health and well-being. More inclined to drink a few pints or overeat or whatever, rather than getting the connection, making the connections that Men's Health Week talked about last week as well, up along the way. So these are some of the lifestyles that say we know. And I was just reading before I come on here to put a few slides together yesterday. I'm saying, like, especially around the foods, maybe the alcohol, and in the past, maybe smoking, some of the behaviors we pick up, I often wonder. And I ask myself the question, and I know some of the answers back. Sometimes we use these as a way of being in the world and dealing in the world with things perhaps that we struggle with, rather than going and asking for the supports that we need. And you can see the reason when I go back to that slide I had a few moments ago about being strong and being stoic and whatever. I know myself as a man in the world, it took me a fair while to arrive at the point where I could recognize the fact that the feeling side of my life was absolutely elemental to how I made connections, not just with myself, but with those I loved who loved me, my friends, my family, my passions, all of these things. And so many men that I've worked with afterwards in the world have said the very same thing. And yet, as men, sometimes we can struggle with that aspect of our life and our health and our well-being. You know, our feelings and the fact that we can reflect on our feelings actually put us at the very top and the peak of the species. It's a really wonderful thing. And I often say to men, you know, listen to our feelings. It takes a little bit of time sometimes to practice this, but it's a really lovely and beautiful way, at least, to be able to connect in with exactly how we're feeling. Where are we in our wellness? And maybe it might begin to give us the map of the stepping stones to where we need to go in relation to finding health and well-being and the supports around it. For many years, I've worked around Ireland and I've been doing training in all kinds of places. And one of the things that used to really kind of shock me time and time again was that for a lot of us as men, we just didn't know signs and symptoms, for example. The simple signs of any kind of illness, but especially around the physical signs and symptoms of stress. And I've been in many a room where I've used a slide like this with this kind of information. I've been working with men, I've showed the slide, and the amount of guys that say, God, Lorcan, I'm looking at that. I have a good few of those. I didn't know that was even stress, you know? So for ourselves to be able to go back to that thing about the phone, to find the really good information, to be able to begin the conversation with ourselves around minding our health and our well-being, to find out exactly what it might mean to be stressed, either physically or emotionally, and then to be able to take the significant incremental steps to minding our health and well-being. Look at it's the only show in town. It's a really great way to live the connections and live with health and well-being for ourselves. Here's an iconic photograph. You'll all recognize him. It's Neil Armstrong stepping out across the moon. And you know, this is back in 2018. Helen was with us for this. This was planning for International Men's Health Week. And I remember Colin Fowler in MHFI, we had to ask NASA for permission to use this. It's so iconic. And they said, yeah, work away, great. You're using it for health awareness. Fantastic, off you go. And we did use it. But it's one of those iconic photographs that shows a man stepping out across the stars and bringing him back to Earth. And it looks like in one way the most fantastic photograph in the world or out of the world, but also it looks like a lonely photograph. This man stepping out there, the man by himself, he's doing it, great stuff, on with your brother. But actually the night he stepped out, or the day he stepped out onto the other side of that moon, back in NASA, all of this team were there. He did not do that by himself. He did not step in on that moon by himself, and he did not make it home safely back to his family with his friends by himself. And I just think it's a lovely thing to be reflecting on here today in relation to being men and our health and our well-being. Stop being in the fantastic isolation. Find our partnerships, find our tribes, find a conversation in our heart that gets out and reaches out. Look at the guy across from you, the person across from you, your wife, your brother, your uncle, you know, and begin the conversations that have to do with living a flourishing life, better lives for men better lives for all. It's a fantastic photograph, but this is the photograph that I love. That one back in NASA. And could you imagine the cheers in that room when he stepped out on that moon? And every man, woman working at those desks had been part of doing that. Helen had asked me on here today, and I'm only going to go for another few minutes because we're going to have a chat with her at the lunchtime hour. We're coming into it. What works with engaging men? We have a national men's health policy, and she mentioned the wonderful Noel Richardson, and there's loads of other people, Paula Carroll, Colin Fowler. There's loads of people that have been involved in working around developing not just the policy, but the resources that are the lenses of what we're learning around engaging with men and getting men to use services. And here's one slide, it's a little jigsaw. I'm not even going to go through it all in great detail, but just enough to find the hook is in there. You can see it on the screen. So there's things now we know about engaging with ourselves and supporting us as men, like me, to get to a service, that are really important around supporting us in relation to our health and our well-being. And most of them, when you look at them, they make absolutely heart and head sense. Positive approach, finding hooks, hands-on approach. The Sheds in Ireland doing fantastic work in relation to bringing men together, new conversations in the Men's Development Network. All of these things are really, really important in relation to how we relate and bring men in to use services. And I think one of the most important things I've learned over the years in relation to supporting men around using services and getting the supports that we need has been demonstrated so lovely by those two friends sitting at the start of that video who have been through the noonday heat and have bumped into something that had to be dealt with and looked into, and the support's got. That's really where it's at, the relational, new conversations approach. And I would say to any person out there, or any man out there especially, we can only learn conversation and the art of it by actually doing it. And we can only learn about building better health and well-being for ourselves by being able to reach out and recognize maybe the places where we can ask for that support and actually getting it. I was at a conference 2 years ago, I think. It was on living well with and beyond cancer, the recovery conference. It was a fantastic conference. But I remember a man speaking and saying on the stage that day, he said about trying to get to the service that he needed in Cork. And he'd had a diagnosis, but he still couldn't bring himself to going to get the additional support that might have helped him. And he said he got to the door and he walked down, and he'd been down a few times before, I think. But he rang the doorbell and the door opened. And when the door opened, he had no voice to say what he needed. But thankfully, the person at the door recognized exactly what he needed. And at that time was pre-COVID. He was in, he could be brought in, and the next thing he saw was the kettle, and he had a coffee, and he found that service. And he said, I found that service, and I found my life, my recovery, and my wellness in meeting the people who are part of that service. A man who, when he rang the doorbell, had nothing to say because he was caught in the lights, but he got there. And I would say that to all of us as men, make the first step. Make the first step. Don't be afraid of it. Don't delay, go today. Think about this. Our GP is our gatekeeper for one part of our health. Our friends, our family, our communities, ourselves are part of the other equation in relation to how we mind our health and well-being. 2 weeks ago, there was a conference in Dublin, and I took this out of the Irish Times or the Indo. I can't remember where I saw it. But Paul Gilligan obviously spoke at it. I don't know the man, but I read this and I said, that is absolutely beautiful. And he had 3 things to keep in mind to people going away from the conference. And he said, look, this is really important. For all of us where we're in the middle maybe of coming through something that's really challenging, you've had a diagnosis, there's all the uncertainty. Believe you're loved. Believe you're a good person. Believe that within you, even in the challenges that sometimes come over the fence at us, that our resilience can grow and we can respond and find our heart and soul, not just within ourselves, but people walking into our lives that we never knew beforehand, that can be part of our wellness. Trust in others. Have a look out and see who's the person I could have a chat with and communicate with, and talk to that person. I'm sure Paul will say the same when he comes on to have a chat with us in a few minutes. And the last one for all of us as we come out of COVID, and it's going to take a while, loads of people have been so deeply impacted by it. loads of people, is that we need to give time to that. We need to value our losses. We need to grieve our losses. We need to hold our uncertainties with great kindness. And we need to share our stories with one another in appropriate ways that allow us to come back into wellness and health. And that's really my take-home message today. The last take-home message, I suppose, is in relation to this. Here's Davy. He was mentioned a few moments ago by Helen, and she said, you know, he was part of that. We are all champions. We can all be champions. We can all say to our brother, how are you feeling? We can all say to the man we know that maybe we're feeling is a little bit under the weather, would you not go and get that checked out? We can all say to ourselves, it's about time you took a rain check, Lorcan, and said, how are you? And then find one of those services, hse.ie, Mary Keating, Men's Development Network, and honour the wisdom in ourselves that wants to live well, better lives for men and better lives for all. It's been a pleasure to be here with you for the few minutes, and I just would love, we've still about 15 minutes to go, Helen, and we might have a chat and see where we are. Go mind ourselves, and it's lovely to be here with everybody today. Thank you very much.
Lorcan, thank you so much for that. My gosh, I think probably one of the things that's really staying with me at the moment that you've said is give ourselves time here after COVID. I think we're all fairly jaded and tired, and that time is actually what we all require. And like to value that loss as well, as opposed to saying I shouldn't be feeling like this. I am feeling like this, and I want to value it. And yeah, really important. I might just, I probably, Lorcan, I'll show this video of PJ Gallagher, I think, and then we'll come back into the room. Is that okay?
Yeah, and Paul will come on with us then for a chat for a few minutes.
And then Paul will come on as well, yeah. So just bear with me a second there now. And we have some questions already, so let's just get through that. And I think it's nice just to put, I suppose, you know, the comical aspect of all of this together as well. And can you see that or not? No, I don't think so.
Not yet, no.
No, okay, bear with me a second, sorry. I'm struggling now. Okay.
Maybe PJ's off duty. No, he's back. Here he's coming now. He might be taking a break.
Not sure what's happening there.
Playing now, I think.
Is that playing, Lorcan?
No sound though.
No, so I'm Ava, I'm not sure what's happening there.
Sure, maybe we'll just have a chat for a few minutes.
Yeah, I think
there's some questions in there. Then
yeah, so let me come back into the room there. Okay, back. Paul, would you like to come in?
Yes, folks.
Hi, Paul. So this is Paul. Paul, I introduced earlier on, who is a prostate cancer survivor and also a facilitator for our Survive and Thrive program with the Mary Keating Foundation, but also with Solace in Waterford. Lorcan, do you want to ask us any questions, or will we maybe look at some of the questions that are in the chat box there?
Yeah, there's some really nice questions. You know, I just see the first one. You know, do you have any advice to start changing your view on what masculinity is, and how to encourage men in my life to get help they need? And I don't know, you know, maybe some of what I was saying there maybe answered some of that coming towards the end. I think my experience and the experience of other men, and Paul, you probably might have something really good to say on this as well, is that for myself, conversations just start with how are you, you know, and there's probably no silver bullet. I think, you know, some of it has to do with our tone, you know, and it's an interesting thing that for ourselves as men, especially around our health and our well-being, safety is a huge thing. And it's around where we feel safe and where we can talk. And, you know, when we did the National Men's Health Policy, when we did the first piece of research getting inside men's health, this is really interesting, I always felt, that it was something like 86% of men said when they were asked if they would want to talk about their health or well-being, especially mental health issue, they would probably talk to their wife, their mother, their sister, or maybe some woman they were close to. So it was really interesting. People said about women as gatekeepers of men's health. We wanted to change that. We need to be, gatekeepers for our own health. But I think sometimes that's it, it's just being able to start the conversation, as a conversation rather than going in at health. But Paul, you might have something to say on that as well.
Yeah, you're quite true there, Lorcan. I suppose for a lot of the time it's the language that's being used that I had found talking to other friends of mine as well. The type of language that we use sort of frightens people away to a degree. Like, I suppose the question that arises quite often is, if I only got it in time. This phrase, if I only got it in time. So my thoughts on that. Well, how do you know? So it's going back to your own family first of all. If you can talk, and sometimes it's difficult to talk with your own family. It could be your best friend or a friend of a friend outside the circle altogether that you open up to. Quite a lot of people that Helen and I have dealt with on the Survive and Thrive program with the Maria Keating Foundation find it better to open in a situation like that. These are the people that obviously have come forward for help or to get some advice. But apart from that, the people who haven't, I think it's up to, everybody to, if you have friends, and like you say, I use some of your own phrases there, Lorcan, check in with that neighbor, like you said earlier. And, when you check in with your neighbor, you don't know what you're going to talk to them about. It could be about the weather, but suddenly something like an issue regarding an ailment could come up. And I think you're quite right in what you're saying there, Lorcan.
Yeah.
And I suppose, for me, it's that if you're asking somebody how are you, it's genuine, and you're waiting and you're listening. I think listening is really important there, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And as you said there a few moments ago, and that man said last week at the conference in Dublin, it's fantastic that there's an opening up in our country and all, it's really great to be able to have coffee outside. I had something to eat with my wife last Saturday for the first time. I don't know when, outside, just a normal thing to do. But, be really respectful. I was looking around the tables and saying, be really respectful of everybody's in still the place of, uncertainty. And you don't want to give a load of attention to all of it all the time either. But we have to be really respectful of the process we're on. It is a process. And I think if that allows it to calm down a bit, and that can be really helpful, And Paul, you might know this as well. I know for men have said to me, there is that question there. Like, very often men are fear a diagnosis, or the fear being told because they fear how they're going to respond in front of their families. And they fear that they might cry, or to be upset, or to be sad, or they mightn't have they wouldn't have the emotional capacity to deal with it. And I say, I would say incrementally again to any person like that, please trust yourself. And that's okay. It's okay. I've cried years and yards. It's a very healing thing and a very natural thing to do in our lives. If we're sad, our body tells us we need to cry. And there's something very powerful actually about a good cry. And you say, oh my God, I feel like I've been washed clean. I didn't know I was carrying that. It's a normal, natural body reaction. And I always feel kind of for ourselves as men, especially, how somewhere along the line we were talked out of that really good thing in a toolbox that we have. It was very unfortunate, So I would be saying that to men, don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid of that. If you're sad, it's okay to be sad. And it's the most normal thing for our families to be around us as well, to be sad. But Paul, you made a really good point as well. And I know men have often said, I've a couple of really significant men in my life that are very supportive to me. And sometimes they've been really, really supportive in the sense of that I've been able to chat out something with them in a little distance from other places, you know what I mean? Because you don't maybe say, I don't want to be worrying the family or whatever. And family will be worrying about you anyway, but sometimes to have a few places where you feel you're in a safe house, be able to explore and chat and tease things out and be able to go. That's really helpful as well, And I think there's an openness. We're getting there as men, and we're using our friendships much better and much more powerfully than we did before.
I think, Lorcan, another very important person to play a role in all of this, as I have found in the past, is your local GP. Your local doctor, he's been with you for a long period of time. In my case, I have been with my doctor for 40 years, since I was, you could say, 18, 19 years of age. And you build up a relationship. Fortunately, I had a very good relationship with my GP, but there's lots of people out there probably been with their doctor for 30 plus years. And the only time they go is when they need the little license signed for the driver, the little thing signed for the driver license or whatever, in and out, and you pay your money. But as Helen will tell you as well, and on our Survive and Thrive programs, I think you need to give yourself time when you go into your GP. It's not just a matter of going, what's wrong with me? Here's a few tablets, out the door. You mentioned it, Lorcan, yourself. There's more conversation there. And I think if people, men in particular, have a chat, go in as a more conversationalist than an ailment conversation in one sense, knowing that you're not right. But I think if you spend 5 or 10 minutes and not rushing out the door as soon as you go in, I think it could play a big part in your life down the road.
And just to add to that, I was saying to Helen last week, and I don't have research on this, but I have an instinct and intuition around it, is that because I've talked to some men about this, and especially through the pandemic, Paul, like you're saying it, and it's my message as well, always don't delay, go today. Sometimes because of the pandemic, fellas might say, look, it's like the women and children first. It's like the life quote meant that I don't like going annoying the doctor in the middle of a pandemic, even though I have a pain up my left side or a pain in my arm. And listen, don't stop that. You have to don't delay, go today. I think that's really, really important messaging, and to be getting into the space where we're more aware of the fact of how we are in ourselves, how we are in our bodies. And as you said, Paul, and as the two guys, I thought, what you call him at the very start, Tony puts up his hand, Tony Ward, and says, I did not go, and I'm sorry I did not go. And I'm lucky to, be here and well to be able to talk about the fact that, so please do and go get those supports. That's what I'd be saying.
And just to add to that as well, like sometimes, it was, I knew my doctor so well, I can speak from experience in this, but sometimes you may need to take somebody with you, just to listen in, not to be, because I've often gone into a consultant's room there on my own from time to time, and you get a lot of information. And if my wife asked me, what did he say? You pick on one or two things, but there could be 4 or 5 other things that were vitally important to the conversation.
Yeah. So I think nicely we've answered some questions there actually that have been on screen from Facebook through conversation. So I hope that satisfies our attendees asking. But there is something here, and I think we're all very aware of this, that it's really hard to connect when you're actually working remotely. And I suppose the long lockdown has maybe created that kind of difficulty even further for people to try and, as you were saying, Lorcan, we talked about this, procrastinating, like, I'll do that, when things get better, or I can't go there right now, but I will do it later. And that, like, as Tony's friend said, Monday might not come.
Yeah. So we do need to, and like, I'm very tactile, the way I like to live in the world probably comes across from me. I love working with people in groups. I love a scone somewhere in the middle of a day when I'm working with a group. I love being with people. So a lot of people are like that. We're very tactile. And the screen that we're on here today has its limitations. Having said that, I would say to that person, over COVID, even with men's groups and other groups that I work with and that I'm part of, this screen has become more than a lifeline. And we have, as friends, we have yet learned to use it in a really, reflective and good way. So, sometimes we need to think about that as well and say, well, how can we use this? People are using this technology for counseling, for support, for services. So I would say, think about it, don't talk it down. Think about what's in front of us as an opportunity rather than the limitation maybe around it. If I couldn't see my GP today and I knew I could talk to him on this screen, I think it would be a great support to have it. You know what I mean? So, and I know there is that we're very tactile, but we're getting there and we'll be out in the world again soon, all of us. But let's use what we have to the best as we can, as we go.
And I think Paul and I would certainly agree with that in terms of like running, a Survive and Thrive program with like over 14 members online, or participants online. people who've survived cancer and come out the other side, you know, experiencing so much of the same. But the connection is actually the most important thing.
Yeah.
Seeing people's faces, looking at reactions, and a lot of emotion and upset that can happen in a room. But you know what? That's real connection. And the commitment, as far as I can see, is much better than the face-to-face, because the stressors are not there trying to get from one place to another, trying to finish work or get children, you know, somewhere and get back for this program. It isn't ideal, but actually it has surprised me no end that this has worked really well, and it has got us through a crisis, no doubt.
And when it's safe and when it's appropriate, and when the people understand that, especially your program, it's a group setting, people get to know one another, you've established a safety, it can work really very powerfully for people, you know. So I think some of this will be definitely part of our future.
Yeah, it'll be
I also think, yeah, I also think, Helen, as well, you're right. It's about connecting with people. And even during COVID times, you know, we all went for a little walk. We took the walks in, and even you might meet somebody socially distanced, obviously, a friend or even two friends would go together socially distanced or whatever the case may be. And I think it gives you the opportunity maybe to reflect, you know, and maybe talk about something that you hadn't thought about, you know, during that little stroll or something. But I think, Lorcan, you mentioned it earlier again. I think it's all about connecting with people, and that's where, for me, I found it very, very beneficial, in the sense that I was able to give something back, you know, from my side, through the Maria Keating Foundation, through the Solace Cancer Support Centre in Waterford, and bring that message across to people, like the messages we were just saying there, you know. Check in with your GP, talk to somebody, family, talk to a friend, open up a bit more to the whole concept, and not just keep it in yourself. Get that stress out of your body, or a stressful thought that might be, you know, limbering there for quite some time. We all have busy jobs. We're all, you know, busy. Life is busy at the moment, and I think it's just about learn to talk, and also learn to talk to healthcare professionals in a more meaningful manner, as I've mentioned.
That's a lovely way to land it at 2:00.
Yeah.
It's well said. You know, for
Thanks,
everybody
Paul.
out there listening, it's lovely.
Yeah, and I think like volunteering, you know, and giving back is powerful too, I would say, isn't it, Paul? You've just said it there, actually, you know, just volunteering your time.
Well, it's a great sense of achievement, you know, for me, like, to do it, because I as you and I, Helen, have experienced, we're dealing with people in a similar boat, for the want of a better word. People, through experience, we can say this, like, that people have said things on our Survive and Thrive programs that they probably wouldn't have said to their nearest and dearest. And like Helen has mentioned a moment, it's been a huge weight off their shoulders, as you had said as well, Lorcan, a huge weight off their shoulders, and it's opened up other avenues that never happened. So, to leave on this note, to close on this note, from my point of view, I think we've mentioned it before. I think, yes, get involved, you know, get the information, talk to the Maria Keating Foundations of the world. There are cancer support groups across Ireland, in every little town in Ireland, and maybe not every village, but certainly every city, every town in Ireland, that will give you the support. And if it's not immediate, like Helen has said, we have it here this morning, or today, at lunchtime today, in front of us on Zoom and whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And Lorcan, your closing, thanks, Paul. Lorcan, your closing comments?
Again, just to say, it's been said so well, and Paul has said it from experience as well. You know, we just, as men, we need to be minding ourselves, minding our health and our well-being, minding each other, and going gently. You know, it's not a word we often use as men, but we need to go gently and carefully. And as I say, our motto is better lives for men, better lives for all, in our own organization. Not a bad motto. And all of us, the last thing probably is, all of us, and Paul has demonstrated, all of us can be a champion in a very small way, asking the question, waiting for the answer, and mind yourselves.
And for me, it's to stay connected, you know, tune in wherever you can, stay connected with someone, some person, you know, who you feel is your support and your backbone. I'd like to thank you both so much for being with us today. I think it's been a lovely lunchtime session, one of the best ones I've had in a while. So it's lovely to have you both. And I think, you know, there's some really important messages in that hour that people will take away. I'm going to attempt to share this video one more time so we can have a laugh on the way out. So I hope this works. So let me try again here. Okay, I think I'm getting there this time.
Yeah.
PJ is a good friend of the Marie Keating Foundation, but he talks about his father and he talks about himself in all of this, and his father died from cancer, but he learned from that. And Tony has learned, you know, from something that he had done. So we'll sign off on this and just enjoy, and excuse the bad language.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
My old man, God knows what age he was, one of them Dublin fellas that just, you know, by the time he was 28, he had a bald patch of comb over and wore a full suit in the beach. You know, these fellas, you know, loved cigarettes and beer, and, you know, basically, you never thought you were ever going to get sick, you know. I think he was married before he made his confirmation, that sort of generation of man. He was so obviously not well for such a long time, but no talking to him. Go to the doctor. No, I'm grand. I'm grand. Please go to the doctor. No, I'll be grand. I just know, like, and eventually when he did go, it was way too late. I mean, it was way too late. He held on so long, I think the doctors, I think maybe the cancer kept him alive. And I guess I'm the opposite now. I fart funny and I'm into the doctor. I mean, I don't care. It might be 60 quid for that fart, but I'm getting checked. Last year, couldn't stop going to the toilet. And I mean, walking the dogs, getting into the park. I had me bushes planned, I'd be toilet bushes planned, right? I'll go to the toilet in that bush, and then I'll get past the one where I found the frisbee there a couple of years ago, and I'll do another little squirt in that bush. Like, you know, when you pee more than your dogs on the dog walk, you start thinking, there's a problem here. And I went to the doctor, and I really didn't want to go, because I think, as much as lads don't like talking to each other, you really don't want to talk to each other about, you know, your bum and your Mickey and all these things, and what happens if something's wrong with them? How do you even go with that? And then there's the whole invasive process. You think to yourself, there's this rock, and I don't even know what it does, called the prostate, and it's right up my arse. And the doctor's going to go in there and he's going to shove his hand in and he'll lose his watch and everything. It's going to be awful and I'll never get out. And then I'll have to go back and get it all removed in the surgery. And he's going to be up there for an hour and I'm going to need anaesthetic. And oh my God, I'm going to be sick. And how am I going to explain this to people? And the simple fact is, I went in and no messing, I went in and the doctor goes, fine. My pants were down and up within 5 minutes, and he was in there for seconds, and that was it. Turns out my diagnosis was I'm 45 and I was drinking too much water. That's it. That's the peace of mind I got. I haven't a clue what it does. I don't care what it does. All I wanted to do in my life is nothing. I don't want it to grow. I don't want to know it's there. I don't want to talk to it. I want me and my prostate to have the relationship I have with my neighbours. We know we exist and we have nothing to do with each other. You know, that's it. Just keep your hands off me bins. And you ignore me and I'll ignore you, right? That's it. Every so often I want to check in that you're doing all what you're supposed to be doing. Don't step out of line, it's grand. I want my prostate to be like the public during the coronavirus. Mind his own business. Stay isolated. Don't bother me. Stay on my business and I'll stay on yours. Off prostate.